Endgame was a monumental shift of the superhero universe. The scope of that movie, the idea of that film, is something larger than I think anyone imagined.
How's it going, everyone? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, where we talk all things Marvel and MCU. And yesterday was the official global press conference for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I was lucky enough to attend it. And a lot of you have been asking me to do a breakdown of everything that was said, which is what this video is going to be, but unfortunately they have asked us not to show any footage or play any audio, with the exception of what I showed in the beginning. But we do have a transcript of what everybody said during the press conference, and we can talk about that. And we need to, because there was a lot revealed about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, what its meaning is, how impactful it's going to be towards the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and if there are any surprises that could be coming up in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series. Some of the questions that were asked that we'll get into were, are there any surprises throughout the show? Is there going to be more than one season of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Will Hydra and or S.H.I.E.L.D. show up? And will the Falcon and the Winter Soldier affect other shows coming up in the MCU by doing anything crazy like introducing mutants? And I'll go over every single one of these questions and answers. The entire press conference was about 45 minutes long. The host, Kelly Carter, asked a few questions in the beginning, and then it was opened up to questions from the press, which is where I got to personally talk to Kevin Feige, Anthony Mackie, and Sebastian Stan and ask them my question. So we'll go over everything that everybody said in this press conference and talk about what it means for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier and the future of the MCU. If you love Marvel news, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest Marvel videos. So the press conference started off by talking about the difference between making a show and making a movie like they're used to making. Kevin Feige started it off by saying, "This is the second show that is coming out to Disney+, but it was our first one that we started." He said that the writer Malcolm Spellman got to experience a bunch of filmmakers who had never done TV before. Everybody was trying to figure out, but it was really meant to prove to everybody, to them and the audience, that just because it's on TV doesn't mean that it's not going to be as big as a movie. So for those of you who may be kind of worried that this is a TV show and can't go as big as a movie, well, the budget for the show was insanely high. And having seen the first episode, it's insanely cinematic. If you were watching the beginning of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and nobody told you that it was a TV show, you definitely would think that it was a movie. And Marvel and Disney specifically made it this way. Director Kari Skogland chimes in and she said, "I approached it like a film. From the beginning, we were making a 6-hour film and just figuring out where to snip it at certain hour marks. So it was shot like a 6-hour movie, then shortened just a little bit because from what I've seen and what I've heard, each episode is going to be between 45 minutes to an hour long." Head writer Malcolm Spellman then talked about what it was like to set the tone for the show, and he said that there was about a 12-second moment in Captain America Civil War where it feels like every single Marvel fan knew that these two guys, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, were gonna be able to support a movie or franchise. And he talks about how it's really funny and kind of a buddy comedy like Rush Hour, but at the same time, it's also very gritty like 48 Hours. So it's funny, but it's going to have a lot of serious tones and address a lot of important issues. Then Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan stepped in and talked about each of their characters personally, what they're going to be like in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Anthony Mackie said, "It's always a surprise when the minds get together and the information trickles down to you. When I first read the script, I was really happy and acknowledged the fact that they were in Louisiana specifically because that's the best state in the Union and New Orleans is the best city in the world. I had one request that if he was from Louisiana, that I had to eat crawfish on camera. I don't know who said no, but somebody said no. The idea of Sam Wilson, he's always evolved in the world of Marvel Comics, and now he's evolved in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you remember when Sam first started out, he was a hustler, and as African American culture evolved, Stan Lee evolved him into different iterations of himself. And then he said that he's excited for the world to see the new and improved version of Sam Wilson. Then Sebastian Stan chimed in and addressed the importance of mental health, which is a big part for Bucky in this show. He said, "I've spent 12 years with the character. You grow and evolve with the character. I felt like we had established the character a certain way. Then we had to go into this and go, all right, well, what is he like now? Part of that was us honing in on his sense of humor, so to speak, that came into the tone of the series and his dynamic with Sam Wilson and my own dynamic with Anthony, and then marrying the two. We're really finally kind of zooming in on his quest for identity and in terms of just really accepting his past and re-educating himself about the world that he's currently in. Anthony Mackie then said, the idea of Sam Wilson and the character of the evolution of what's now known as Falcon, to be able to go back and dive into his backstory and his family and his surroundings only betters the character for the audience. Then he made a particularly funny joke about Kevin Feige being the one to kill Iron Man. He said, we're in a place now where we want the audience to know and learn these new characters, especially since Kevin Feige killed Iron Man. They all kind of stopped and laughed a little bit, and then Anthony continued and said, we have to put ourselves in a position where we have to introduce these characters to the audience and give them that relationship. That history they've built over 10 years. We now have 6 years to play catch up, but it's post-blip. And the story really does address that post-blip question, and that is, what is actual life like? It was from here that the conference was opened up to questions and things got really, really good. One of the first questions was, can there be more seasons of the show? A question that fans have really wanted to know, and Kevin Feige jumped in and laughingly said, who's going to answer that one? But then he said, it's a funny question, and it's one that we obviously get asked much more in television because people expect it to be like what people know before. We really did approach it like we do the movies. If we were able to do another one, there's certainly ideas. The slight difference, of course, like with WandaVision, they really will go back and forth between the Disney Plus series and the movies. Sometimes will be a season 2, sometimes will be a feature. So it looks like right now there aren't many plans to actually make a season 2, but rather put Falcon and the Winter Soldier into a movie of some sort. And this is because they're making these shows like they're movies. Another great question that was asked is, why is Sam reluctant to take on the Captain America mantle? And Anthony Mackie said, Sam's whole thing is he went on this journey, this Avenger journey, over 6 movies with Steve because of his respect and admiration for Steve. He says, when Captain America shows up at your door, you answer. That being said, it's the pain, the idea of not being able to go on these missions, not being able to help his friend. There's still people out there that still appreciate camaraderie and friendship just like everybody else. You don't want to see Steve Rogers go away. Just like he was your Cap, Steve Rogers was Sam Wilson's Cap. That's why he says at the end of Avengers Endgame, it feels like it's someone else's. He's a fan just like everyone else. Sam is just a regular guy who won the lottery when Black Widow knocked on his door, and he fell in love and was hoping to have a spinoff with Black Widow. Obviously he says that jokingly, but who wouldn't want to have a spinoff with Black Widow and Scarlett Johansson? But that's a cool thing to hear, that Sam looked up to Captain America as Captain America, and it's a big, big role to fill. Another big question that was asked was, how has Sam and Bucky's love-hate bromance changed since Steve's retirement? Sebastian Stan answered this one saying, I don't think it has changed. It's only gone further divide. They're actually in similar places at the start of the show because Steve's no longer there and they're dealing with the consequences of that. It's sort of thrown them both into opposite corners in terms of facing their lives, their demons, their questions. They've got different things they're facing, but they're in a similar place in terms of questions they're asking, I believe. Then, of course, a big question that was asked, are there more surprises throughout the show? More surprises being more surprises than we saw in the first episode, and yes, there are some surprises. And Anthony Mackie said, yes, there are many surprises. We can't say who they all are, but there are many surprises. Then a question was asked about Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D., if they're going to play roles in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in the future of the MCU. And what's interesting is Kevin Feige, of course, didn't give a direct answer. Of course, he's not going to say, yes, Hydra is going to be in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Kevin Feige doesn't reveal spoilers, but what he did say is, you can always look at the comics. There are new organizations like S.W.O.R.D. that you see in WandaVision, and there's always an inherent need for some organizations in the MCU. I think we're obviously going to see S.W.O.R.D. in the future of the MCU, but could Hydra pop back up, and could it be in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier due to that relationship with Bucky? He certainly does address things in the past in the very first episode, specifically his past when he was the Winter Soldier, but there are many more episodes for him to explore that in. And then, of course, in speaking about all of the crazy rumors that are already starting for this show, a question was asked, will Falcon and the Winter Soldier have a significant impact on the MCU, or is it contained to just this show? In which Kevin Feige replied, the characters of Bucky and Sam are essential to the MCU. Whatever they go through could and should have an impact on the MCU. It is hard to navigate every fan theory that's going to pop up. Not everything is going to be as world-shattering as someone like Mephisto or Reed Richards popping up in WandaVision and breaking the entirety of the MCU. but there can be character shifts that have massive implications for the future. Again, this is a perfect Kevin Feige response, not really giving us too much to avoid any type of spoiler that could happen from a response, but giving us enough to be excited. A question was then asked about what we'll see with US Agent's origin story. What is it going to be like? And does it tie to previous shows? And the answer was, the past is prologue. The clues are everywhere in what has led to this moment. Certainly, that character and that name, sometimes it's just a name, and sometimes we do pull, of course, from their lineage and biography in the comics. Stay tuned over the course of the series. And then the last question of the conference was actually my question. I asked what it was like for Captain America to not be in the MCU anymore, to not be in their lives, and if they felt the responsibility to lead future heroes. Anthony Mackie addressed me first and he said, Endgame was a monumental shift of the superhero universe. The scope of that movie, the idea of that film, is something larger than I think anyone imagined. Our goal, and we've talked about this, I'll speak for Sebastian, was not to mess it up. So we didn't want to be the first crappy Marvel project. Our job was to take the torch and not make a bad show. I'm very happy to say that Steve Rogers will be proud that our show does not suck. Sebastian Stan then came in and said, that question that you just asked is very much built into the arc of both of these characters, where they are at the top of the show, you know? And actually answering that question and exploring that question is very much their journey throughout the show. Who am I now? What do I have to contribute? That guy did this and this, so what is gonna be my legacy, if I even want that? So there's all these pieces to it that are kind of interesting rather than just coming out of the gate and saying, you know, I have all the answers. And that was pretty much the end of the press conference. As I said, I had the last question and they wrapped it up right after. But as you can see, a ton of thought has been put into this show. It's a very meaningful show, and based off of what we've heard, it looks like we can expect a lot of surprises coming up. And when I personally interviewed the director, I asked her if we can expect to be surprised, and she said, I hope so. And I'll be posting that interview as soon as I get it from Disney. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos. In the meantime, let me know what you think about the press conference questions, and for live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.